Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.thebenjamindixonshow.com to register for our blog and join the Progressive Army.
Welcome to the Benjamin Dixon Show. I am, of course, your host. Man, I absolutely love that new music. It's not finished. I probably won't finish it. I just going to leave it the way it is because I just like it. It's a vibe. Anyway, I guess there's some stuff happening in the news that you and I have to talk about. Part of me doesn't care anymore. I'm going to be honest with you. My brain is a little broken when it comes to the stupidity that we see. Not only the stupidity, but the just the bold-faced, the brashness of conservatives. Okay, let me just tell you what I'm talking about. In the midst of what we knew was going to happen with the tax breaks, we knew that the tax breaks were not going to pay for themselves. We knew that the tax breaks were going to increase the deficit. We knew that the tax break were going to add to our long-term debt. We also knew that those things don't really matter, but they seem to only matter when Democrats are in power and we want to do something for the people. But when Democrats are not in power, and don't get me wrong, we all know there's a huge faction of the Democratic Party who don't give a shit about poor people. But most certainly when Democrats are not in power and Republicans are, we know they have no regard, no concern whatsoever for deficits, spending, and they will run up the deficit in the name of tax breaks any given day of the week. And what's frustrating and why I don't really care, but obviously I do because I'm talking about it with you, it's because now that we have seen it come to fruition, what we already knew, the Wall Street Journal is saying that revenue is only up by 3%, spending is up by 8%. The deficit is up by $897 billion in the past 10 months. In the midst of that information coming out, which we knew was going to happen, no surprise, you have Republicans who are now calling for more tax breaks in order to compensate for Donald Trump's fiasco with the trade war with China and the tariffs. Senator Rick Scott of Florida, who is a criminal, who should be in jail, who looks like Skeletor from He-Man, but that's besides the point. He is calling for tax breaks, additional tax breaks, to compensate for Donald Trump's blunder on this trade war. It's almost necessary for us to compartmentalize actual concern, actually giving a damn, because we see this game played in front of us over and over and over again. And I have something important to talk about in a few minutes. Like, this is important, but this is stuff that we knew was going to happen. We knew that as soon as the deficits manifested from that last tax break that Paul Ryan and Donald Trump signed into law, and Mitch McConnell, we knew that the deficit was going to run up. And we also knew that when the deficits go up, that they're going to call for a cut in spending. And where are they going to call for a cut in spending? Of course, it's never going to be in defense contractors. Of course, it's never going to be cut spending of tax breaks, right? Because tax breaks are equivalent to spending. Right? We knew that was not going to be their remedy. We knew their remedy was going to be to attack whatever remnant of safety nets we have left. So we knew that, and we knew it wasn't, and that's why I say it's not as important, even though it's critically important. It's like, it's one of those things where you see it happening right in front of you. And because you know what? It's like climate change. Whereas I do believe climate change is extremely important. It's like it's happening in front of us. We know the results before they happen because the scientists have told us. We see it coming. And yet and still, we have half of America's voting electorate who pretend as though it's a hoax. Shout out to Bernie Sanders in that amazing tweet saying Donald Trump thinks climate change is a hoax. Donald Trump is an idiot. But half the country, they're idiots. And we see it coming. And yet, there's literally almost nothing that we can do about it because we do not have the political will and because Democrats fall for this crap over and over and over again. Now, we could talk about Jeffrey Epstein. I'm all over the place, but I just gotta, we don't talk often, and I'm trying to get back to us talking a whole lot more. I really, really am. But I'm all over the place a little bit, but you'll see where it all ties together. Jeffrey Epstein and his murder, his suicide, sorry. And the fact that, there's a lot of conspiracies that are running around about that. And I really genuinely loathe conspiracy theories. But obviously, this is not a conspiracy. Like, what actually the hell happened there? The only reason I bring him up, not because we're going to talk about him, but because I want to talk about how foolish we are with climate change, such that we look, and trust me, I'm not lost. I may have lost you. Stick with me. It will all come back together. But we're so ridiculous with ignoring the climate changing around us. We're so ridiculous with ignoring what we know is absolutely going to happen. We see it coming. We know it's coming. And yet still we have managed to have half of the voting electorate who look at it and say, oh, it's a hoax. And the reason I mentioned Jeffrey Epstein, and I only mentioned him because of conspiracy theories, and this is the conspiracy theory that I buy into, is the fact that everybody in Washington, D.C., including Republicans who pretend as though it's a hoax, I believe that they 100% know that the climate catastrophe is around the corner, and perhaps there's just nothing that we could do about it. So we just all just play along. We all just keep everyone busy. Because there's nothing. It's like when a meteor is coming, you just carry on. An asteroid is coming to destroy the earth. You just carry on. That's the conspiracy theory I buy into. But the only reason I mention climate change is because it's another example. You thought I got lost? I know I lost you, but I didn't get lost. I don't get lost. It is another example of how we know something is going to happen. We see it happening around us. We see it approaching. And yet half of the voting electorate in this country don't believe it. They think it's a hoax, or they just don't believe. They believe an entirely different, you can't even call it a paradigm, because it's not based on any fact. And this ties back into the conversation about us knowing. We knew that these would be the results of the tax breaks. We knew it. And so it's almost like, why should we care when we know it's going to happen? We see it happen every single time Republicans cut taxes. We see an explosion in the deficit. And they never care about that explosion in the deficit until Democrats get in power. And then all of a sudden, the Democrats want to be the fiscal conservatives. They want to be fiscally responsible. So we're going to get this deficit down. And Bill Clinton, we're going to get those deficits down on the backs of the poorest people in the country, because we're going to do welfare reform. We're going to do welfare to work. Drastically changing the safety nets in this country. But the point is that Democrats play their own role in this, right? Democrats know this is going to happen. They know Republicans are going to play this game. And what's frustrating about it is, while they may not be able to stop these tax breaks from happening, what they do when they get in power is that they try to act as though they are the most responsible. And if we behave as though we're the most responsible by caring about the deficits that clearly do not matter, the debt to GDP probably matters. No, not probably, absolutely matters more than just our raw deficit. But Democrats act as though the most important thing is making sure we get these deficits down, and that we can show that we are the fiscally responsible people. And what do? We inevitably, that's because obviously, okay, let me finish one sentence before I go to the next. We inevitably move towards the right economically. Every single administration. Which goes back to the very important thing that I will talk about in the next segment, which is the real fight that Bernie Sanders is going to have, and that you as a Bernie Sanders supporter, or even Elizabeth Warren supporter, will have. There's a fight. You think you've seen a fight with Hillary Clinton, or you thought you're seeing a fight now against Joe Biden. It's nothing. Nothing compared to what's coming around the bend. We'll talk about that in the next segment. But for now, I don't know that I have the energy in me to give a shit. Excuse my language. I'm going to do better about all this profanity. Why should we care when we know exactly how this game is going to play out, especially if we elect somebody like Joe Biden as the Democratic replacement for Donald Trump? Joe Biden's going to come in with all of his fiscal conservatism. He's going to show that he can get us back to normal. And normal to them is Democrats being the fiscally conservative people who bring down the debt and the deficit, or the deficit at least. That's normal. And so this all goes back to the shift, obviously, right? You know where I'm going with this. The shift in the 1980s, the third wave Democrats, where we like to say stuff like, oh, we're socially liberal and fiscally conservative. No. But yes, I'm saying no as a rejection of that. But you have to say, well, yeah, because that's exactly what Democrats have been over the last 30, 40 years. And here we are, yet again, with the most blatant example of how right-wing economics do not work. Trickle-down economics has never worked. In every example, it has exploded the deficit. We are willing to put this nation in trillions of dollars of debt in order to enrich the richest people. But we won't spend a goddamn penny to help the most marginalized. We would gladly see us spend trillions of dollars on defense contractors and on tax breaks just so Connor and Tanner can get their yacht. We'll gladly do that, but won't spend a few $1 billion on free college education for America, for everyone in this country. We won't spend that. We won't spend 1.6 trillion on counseling the student debt. We won't spend the hundreds of billions that are going to be required to institute Medicare for All. We won't. Because why would America finally ever wake up and say, hey, we could do something productive with our money versus just giving our money to the richest people in this country? And I don't care what you miss me with all of that. Oh, they're innovators. Oh, they're job creators. No. You know, the most valuable asset America has. Look at China. What is China's most valuable asset? It's their population. Because without a population, you can't consume. And without consumption, you have no capitalism, period. What are investors going to invest in if you have no one to consume? The most important factor in this American capitalistic equation, you, the individual, the person who's going to buy, the person who's going to consume, the person who's going to probably get married and, have some children and reproduce another unit to be placed, right? Because that's all we are. We're cogs in this machine. We're units being plugged into this machine for exploitation, to drain wealth out of us, to extract wealth out of us. That's the most important equation. So for everyone to say, oh, they're job creators. There's nothing. Listen, I've actually had the time and the pleasure and the curse of running in some of these circles with job creators, with innovators. And let me tell you, they're some of the dumbest MFers I've ever met in my life. They're some of the most non-talented MFers I've ever. You know how much you can cover up with just an obscene amount of money? You know how smart you can make yourself look even though you're a complete absolute moron if you just have enough money? You know how you can make a company successful if you just have enough money? So all this, they're innovators, they're entrepreneurs, they're risk takers, they're job creators, is meaningless. What matters, you. That's what matters. The individual, the consumer, the people who make this thing work. Not just through our consumption, but through our taxation. We get taxed all the same, right? You know, we get taxed everywhere. We get taxed. State taxes, local taxes, sales taxes. If some of us do pay income taxes, it's quite miserable, but we pay it. They generate their wealth through our labor, right? It's not just about our consumption. It's also about our labor. Oh, but it's the job creators. Well, you don't have a product without the laborers. Oh, we'll just get automation. Well, okay. You don't have any consumption without the consumers. The consumers are the laborers. And how they're going to consume. Anyway, you get the picture. The point is that while Republican orthodoxy and Republican political economy has always said that the key to a successful economy is cutting taxes on the rich, we have seen historically time and again that is not the key. That it has been a lie. It has been a lie since Ronald Reagan got it from Arthur Laffer back in 1981. It has been a lie since then, and we've seen the same results over and over again. And here we have the exact results that we knew was coming. We knew this tsunami of deficit spending was coming. We knew that this climate disaster of economic policy, if I could tie those two together, we knew it was coming. And yet in the midst of it, you have these people have the unmitigated gall to say the solution is for more tax breaks. That's like saying the solution to climate change is to pump more CO2 in the atmosphere. And Democrats, when they get in power, they're going to be like, well, watch us fix the problem. We're going to cut spending. We're going to fix the deficit. We're going to be the fiscal conservatives. Meanwhile, the solution has always been on the other side, not on the supply side, but the consumer and the labor side. That has always been the solution. Can you imagine what would have happened in 2008 to the economy if they had spent that the bailout and they put that money into the hands of the consumers? This is what's so lazy about capitalists. Capitalists are so freaking lazy because they don't want to have to actually compete for your dollars. They just want the government to give them the dollars directly. Can I say that again? Capitalists are lazy because they don't actually want to have to compete for your dollars. If they can get the government to give them the dollars directly, like they did in the bailout, they will gladly accept that than to actually be capitalists and compete for your money. So no, they would never, because you're unpredictable as a consumer. And as a laborer, if we put money in your hands, you might go start a business and no longer provide labor for them. If we put money in the consumer's hands, then we may spend our money here, or we may spend our money there, or we may decide to invest in ourselves. That's why they set up shop on every side of the equation. They're vultures. They are vultures waiting to prey on you no matter where you decide to spend your money, even if you decide to save your money. The banking institutions are there. You decide to go get an education. We already know the scam of higher education. And we know these things. We've seen these things play out in administration after administration. We have seen what works. And yet we foolishly march towards a disaster that we knew was coming all along. We saw it coming, and yet no one did anything about it. So it's kind of hard to care. But alas, it is my job to care and to discuss it with you. Patreon.com/the BPD show. Listen, here is the go become a patron. Here is the most important thing that I'm going to talk about today. I think Love me, hate me. I'm just going to say how I feel. I feel like Bernie Sanders supporters, you're living in a dream world, Neo. You're living in a dream world. Because to be quite honest with you, I don't want to be the bearer of bad news. But even if Bernie Sanders wins, hell, even if Elizabeth Warren wins, do you realize there are two pillars of this American society that would rather see everything burned to the ground than to ever give a single inch back towards leftism and socialism. And they are empowered to actually do something about it. And the only reason I'm laying this at the feet of Bernie Sanders supporters is because I see more emphasis being, well, I'll finish the thought in a second. I see more emphasis being put on fighting against the neoliberal wing of the Democratic Party than fighting against the people who are going to ultimately destroy any program that Bernie Sanders institutes. How do I know? I know this because they actively and willingly and happily burned Obamacare essentially to the ground. It's holding on by threads right now, right? But they sabotaged a plan that was a conservative idea. And I'm not talking about the people. I'm not talking about just the dummies who are in the streets saying, get your government hands off of my Medicare. Not those morons. I'm talking about people who are in positions of power and have the decision-making capacity to block the implementation of something like Medicare for All. Republicans. You guys think, oh my God. Like, you think for a hot second that your biggest fight is to win these primaries? I mean, don't get me wrong. You got to win the primaries to get to the White House. I get it. But man, if we have to start laying the groundwork right now. Depending on how Medicare for All is designed, ultimately, right? How it is officially implemented, you're going to see Republicans. That's just one pillar, because for Republicans, it is not even ideological as much as it is pure power based. What I mean by that is Republicans opposed Obamacare not on ideological grounds because it was their idea. They opposed Obamacare purely based on Machiavellian style politics. Period. And so now if you combine their Machiavellian politics, real politics, I mean, like, it's not even real politique. It's like, it's Machiavellian, to be honest with you. I mean, that's the best way to describe it. If you combine that with the capitalist incentive for undermining Medicare for All, you are going to have two of the biggest opponents that we have seen in our lifetime, not just opposition for the sake of opposition, but people who are currently in power, particularly political power, and have the capacity of undermining any policy Bernie Sanders puts into power. And I know in a way it's like not even the chicken or the egg, but you're putting the horse before the cart because you got to get elected first. But at the same time, that's not true. Do you understand the infrastructure that conservatives have been putting into place even when they were not in power? Like the organizations, the money that was being spent, the media companies, the propaganda machines, right? The advocates, the lobbyists, the think tanks, all those organizations that they've been putting into place for decades in order to forward their political, not even agenda, but their political power, right? Because again, we've seen that they're willing to betray their agenda to maintain political power. I mean, the Machiavellianism of it is astonishing. But it's not This conversation is not putting the cart before the horse, because the preparations have to be made now, because he's only going to have a very small window. And I'm afraid you're going to find out the same thing Barack Obama found out, that there's only so much that you can get done in a certain amount of time. And if you don't have not just the votes, see, that's the thing. It's sad, but it's a true reality, right? People don't just vote. Senators and Congress people don't just vote based on what they believe. You would wish that they would, right? But they don't. They vote based on self-preservation, which ultimately translates currently into getting money to run. What am I saying? I'm saying that if we are not prepared, the people who undermined and scorched the earth around Obamacare are still in power, and they would, oh my God, they would let Medicare for All pass. They would let the private insurance companies go by the wayside, and then they would sabotage it so that they can have an excuse to bring an authoritarian right-wing government in to save us from the failed socialism of Bernie Sanders. You think these people who have sabotaged every socialist light experiment across the global South, across the globe, the people who have instituted regime change, the people who are ready to go to war in Venezuela, the people who have undermined every government that has been people-oriented, labor-oriented. You think the people who institute coups in other nations would not do the same here? In order to save the insurance industry? Do you not believe that there are insurance executives who would not put on their own version of Antifa mask and get out there and fight in the streets in order to preserve their billions of dollars in profits? Listen, some leftists are willing to die and put their lives on the line just for their conscience. Do you not think these motherfrickers, I'm trying, would not put their lives or someone else's lives, their private contractors' lives on the line in order to preserve billions, hundreds of billions of dollars, probably trillions of dollars over a 10, 20-year period? What I'm trying to say is we have not yet seen opposition. And our biggest fight is not the Democratic Party, even though there are parts of the Democratic Party who are in lockstep with this. It is nothing compared to what they are going to do to Medicare for All, even when we get it passed. We have to start thinking a little further out, is the moral of the story. We have to start thinking about who are the people in power that we need to get rid of through elections before somebody takes a sound bite. Who do we need to get rid of through elections to ensure that they're not in a position of authority to undermine Medicare for All? Where do we get the money, and where do we spend the money to compete against the fear campaign that they're going to institute if Bernie Sanders wins? And so, like I started, I feel like you're living in a dream world. Not because we're going after this. We have to go after this. Not because we believe Bernie Sanders or, Elizabeth Warren are our best bets to get Medicare for All. No, there's nothing wrong with fighting for it. There's nothing wrong with being entrenched on social media, fighting for it and pushing back against Democrats who are against it. I get that. But that is not even the fight. Or let me say it more precisely. That's not the only fight that we have to be fighting right now. We need to look 2 years into the future when Bernie Sanders is sworn in, 2.5 years. Not only sworn in, but we've had enough time to actually get a policy ready to be voted on in Congress and in the Senate. By the way, we have to win the Senate, or else none of this matters. Do you all realize? This is why I get so I laugh. I get so frustrated that I laugh at people now when they are like, oh, I'm not going to engage in electoral politics. I just want the socialist revolution. And I'm like, do you understand that all of Bernie Sanders' best intentions don't mean shit if Mitch McConnell is still the Senate Majority Leader? So what would be the point? I know Bernie Sanders says, oh, we need a political revolution. We do, but it can't just be about Bernie. It can't, because he can't do it. And I know he always says this, but I don't know if we act accordingly. I don't know if we actually, we didn't do it. See, what happened was we didn't do it with Barack Obama. Mind you, Barack Obama was not the catalyst. He was not the organizer in office that he was on the campaign trail, right? Then that's their fault, 100%. But the fact remains is that when Barack Obama got into power and he wanted to do things, the institutions surrounding him, the players surrounding him, the power players surrounding him, the people he actually, he was dumb enough to put in his campaign, to put in his administration, ultimately reduced all of his hopes and dreams down to what was tolerable by our system, which was this right-wing Romney care. Those people are still in power. Those people are still in Washington. Those people are still are still in the insurance companies. Those people are still at the think tanks. And they're not all Democrats. Matter of fact, let me rephrase that. Majority of them are not Democrats. And the majority of them, do you see how violent? Oh my God, do you see how violent these white supremacists are? And they have power. And they're represented in the White House in the highest office of the land. You see how crazy they act and how violent they are? How do you think a capitalist is going to act when you're threatening billions of dollars in profits? I just kind of want us to have a reality check, kind of a gut check, to make sure we understand what we're fighting against. We're not fighting against the corporate wing of the Democratic Party. I'm pretty sure Bernie Sanders has got that on lock. It is a fight, but with the sheer organizing power, I think Bernie Sanders has that on lock. What we have not considered is that 50% of the electorate who would rather die than to have Bernie Sanders post office, milquetoast, mayonnaise, bland socialism. I don't say that to insult Bernie Sanders. I say that so that you can understand we're not even talking about real socialism here, folks. We're talking about fire departments, schools, post office socialism, more or less. Post office funds itself through stamps and whatnot and services, but you get the picture. There's half of this country who would rather die. You think you've seen something with Antifa? I keep bringing up Antifa. I'm a fan of Antifa. You guys, complete sidebar. Please go on Netflix and watch Money Heist. It's a Spanish movie, so it's subtitles or overdubs, right? They're actually really good overdubs. But they gave a shout out to Antifa on there in season 3. Watch the first 3 seasons. Well, watch all they have are 3 seasons, but it's a brilliant piece. If you like V for Vendetta and you like Ocean's 11 kind of heist kind of movies, and you throw in the brilliance of Sherlock Holmes, that's Money Heist. It's the bomb. So I bring up Antifa because, Antifa got a shout out in Money Heist. That's really what made me think about that. But I bring up Antifa because the biggest threat to everybody right now, oh my God, Antifa is so violent. I'm like, you have not seen violence until you've seen some entitled, rich prick of a human being, Connor and Tanner and all these rich guys who want their yacht. Oh my God. I mean, just think about the worst and the most obnoxious kid who was like privileged and wealthy at your public school. Now multiply that by the magnitude of order of private school, and then multiply that by magnitude of order of like the elite private school. And that's how brutish, obnoxious, entitled, and potentially violent people who are rich will be to protect their wealth. And at a minimum, there's nothing that they will not be willing to do politically. There's nothing that they won't sabotage. There's no step of this that they won't be there to sabotage it. There's no step in this where they will not be there to spend billions of dollars to push back. There's no step in this where they would rather see this entire system burn than for them to give up like 1% more of their income that they got off the backs of laborers and consumers, by the way. They would rather see this entire system burn. That, my friends, that's the fight that I have always seen. That's why I always keep a laser-like focus on conservatism. That's why I always keep it like you can't possibly have a class analysis and then be proud that your class analysis stops at the Democratic Party. I mean, really? Oh, the Democrats are rich. No, I mean, yeah, they might be millionaires, but we're talking about like Jeff Bezos money, but like hundreds of years older. The entitlement and the ruthlessness and the smug condescension, like they look at us like we're ants to them. The people with the most money, we are ants to them, and they won't think twice about stepping on us in order to protect not their way of living, but their second yacht. That's the fight. And I think that Bernie Sanders' most ardent supporters, I think you guys missed that because you get so entrenched in fighting against the Democratic centrists who are a problem that need to be fought against. But are you guys even prepared to fight against, I don't know. I've used Connor and Tanner twice. I don't even know these guys' names. They're so rich. We don't even interact with them. You don't even run into them. You don't run into them in public. They're at the events that are so snobby that you wouldn't even go in. You wouldn't want to go in your best suit, in your best Easter outfit. For those of you who go to church, in your best, the outfit that you're most proud of. You spend a good $500 on this suit. You go into their establishment and you're going to be the oaf. The classless oaf. You can't even get it. They're going to expect you in your $500 suit. They expect you to wait tables. Those people are waiting. They are going to do everything they possibly can, and they've got money behind them. So what do? It's like the only thing we have, honestly, is our numbers and our political power, but we have to focus and concentrate on getting people out of positions that will have the ability to sabotage it politically. I don't think we're prepared for at all would be the type of right-wing movement that makes the Tea Party look like a bunch of old silly grandmas. And they're organized with their guns, they're organized with their money, they're organized with their private contractors, private security forces. Do you not think that the insurance companies would not go all in like that in order to stop Medicare for All? I just don't know if we took that into consideration, and I think that's a serious thing that we need to be considering, to be redundant. All right, folks, that's all I've got for today. I think I've painted the picture as clearly as it needs to be painted. And go become a patron because we're still stuck in this capitalistic system, and I need your support. Let's talk more about it. Leave your comments in the comment section. What do you think? Are we ready for that fight? Let me know. Take care.
The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.thebenjamindixonshow.com to register for our blog and join the Progressive Army.